Hey, I'm Izzy from Find a PhD, and we're going to take you through all you need to know about how to write a great research proposal for your PhD project. We're going to look at what actually is a research proposal. We're then going to look at the point of one and how to start writing your research proposal, including a worked example. So, what actually is a research proposal? Well, one of the easiest ways to explain it is if the rest of your application explains your ability to do a PhD. The research proposal demonstrates the actual PhD you plan to do and why you want to do it. It's the first opportunity to take your ideas and ambitions and put them on paper. You need to demonstrate that you have a tangible research project that can be achieved in 3 to 4 years. And you can do this in 3 main steps. Number 1, your PhD is research around a question, so the proposal helps to define that question. It tells people the what and the why. You might have several aims that make up that research question, and these might evolve over time as you actually do your research, and that's okay. Your methodology section is where you talk about how you're going to do your PhD. What sources will you use and how? Do you have a particular theory or method you're going to use to examine your sources or conduct your research? It's also a really good opportunity to show that your research can be achieved in the 3 to 4 years. And you can do this by being specific about the scope of the project. So, for example, you could pick a defined time period to study if you're looking at a history topic. And lastly, you need to show that you're the best person to do the project. Your exact qualifications and grades will be listed on your application form. So try to demonstrate that you have relevant knowledge and experience. For example, I studied X module in my such and such masters, and you saw a gap in the current research, or maybe you just wanted to continue studying it. Your potential supervisor in university admissions want to see that you're passionate about the topic and you'll stay to see it all the way through. So who actually needs to write a research proposal? Well, it can depend project to project, but you're more likely to write a research proposal if you're self-proposing your PhD project. And in these cases, the research proposal is a key part of that wider application process, alongside your existing qualifications and your references. And self-proposed projects are more common in the arts, humanities, and social science subjects. But some advertised projects in these fields are becoming more common, so the columns here aren't exclusive. Because you might still be asked to write a research proposal for an advertised project to demonstrate your understanding of the PhD project and outline the aims and what you want to achieve. Research proposals are less common in STEM subjects, as these projects tend to be advertised. But if you can't find a project you would like to do, then knowing how to write a research proposal could be useful, so you can go after the project you actually want to do. Knowing the audience of your research proposal can be really helpful to think about when you're writing it, and there are 4 key audiences to consider. Number 1 is your prospective supervisor. They want to know that you're proposing a subject that fits their research theme, and they need to be confident they can actually help you achieve your PhD. It's a really good opportunity to show them your understanding of the subject and what's involved. Now, one you might not have thought about is the admissions team. Now, they're unlikely to be experts in your field, so although your proposal is still academic writing, it needs to be written in a way that most people reading it can get a general understanding of what you want to do. Now, this is important because the admissions staff need to understand what you want to study and how this fits with the research focuses of that university, and is your project achievable in 3 to 4 years. It might also be useful to share your research proposal with funding bodies, charities, and trusts. Now, some of these might be external to your research topic and even non-academic. These organisations are looking at the values and the outcomes of your research and whether or not it aligns with their values, so it's important not to overcomplicate the technical information. And lastly, it's important for you. Writing down your ideas helps you to hone in on them. If you close your eyes and you think about your PhD, your mind's probably going in a million directions. So this helps you really commit to what your PhD could look like. To achieve this, You need to keep your academic writing style, but give it that slight personal statement vibe so you don't overcomplicate things. So I mentioned before, the research proposal is a key part of the entire application process for a self-proposed project. But some PhD programs wait and they ask students to develop their research proposal during the degree, usually after you've completed your initial training. This is a lot more common in North America, but it's something you might do if you're on a UKRI funded PhD program in the UK. So even if you don't end up submitting a research proposal with your application, it is still a good idea to know how to write one. It's useful to know if you're asked to do it, if you want to change your PhD project during your studies, and just generally going forward in your career. And now we're coming on to part 2 of our talk, which is what is the purpose of a research proposal? So, a research proposal demonstrates that your project will fulfill the criteria of a PhD. What does that actually mean? Well, it's research that presents a significant original contribution to knowledge or practice. But you don't actually know that yet. So the research proposal is to help you in the step before. Your research proposal demonstrates that your project will become a PhD. And the emphasis here is become. You're not expected to know your outcomes or research direction, and honestly, nothing goes to plan anyway. So they want to see that you've thought about your project, its potential, and you understand where you're situating your project within the existing literature. So how do you show that your project could become a PhD? You need to show it's worthwhile, that there's a point and a need to do this research. You need to show it's viable, that the work can be done with support within 3 to 4 years, and that you're the one capable of completing it, which is your chance to show your passion and your experience. So how do you make your project worthwhile? Well, originality is key. But how can you be original? Well, you could study something completely new. This is usually the hardest for a lot of disciplines, but you don't need to reinvent the wheel. It's about taking areas that are underdeveloped and shining a new light on them for a purpose. So it could be new thinking about a recent event. Take COVID and its impact on your area of interest, for example. You could also fix something. That could look like improving a current methodology or creating a new one. It could be something you've studied in your master's or in your field of work and you realize it's not working well. Or you could do a compare and combine study. Interdisciplinary is a massive buzzword in academia and among funding bodies, and there's lots of scope to find collaboration between your field and a different one. Or you could do a comparative study. You could combine 2 theories. You could take a current theory and apply it to a new area. Or has a theory evolved? So could you look back at the past with a new lens? There are lots of options here, and this is one of the most common ways to bring originality into your PhD project. But there are 2 other ways to demonstrate that your project is worthwhile. And firstly, you should consider its value. You need to sit down and have a think about what need there is for your project and why your work is important. And then lastly, the outcomes. Now again, in some subjects like the STEM ones, this can be a little bit more obvious, but don't let that hold you back. Your work just needs to contribute to your field or the academic discussion. So will your work add a new angle? Does it advance the discussion, engage the community, or influence policy? There are lots of valuable outcomes to a PhD, and these are just a few suggestions. The second part of showing your project has the potential to become a PhD is that it's viable. This is the logistics part. So, your methodology. You need to show that you understand your field by picking relevant methodologies. Are they feasible? Do you or your university have access to the resources you need? And if not, how will you get this access? Do you need a collaborator? And lastly, suitability. This is your chance to personalize your research proposal to the university you're applying to. What can that specific university offer you? Is it equipment, archives? Is it the department expertise? Essentially, can you complete the PhD at the place you're applying to. And the third part of showing your project has the potential to become a PhD is that you're the right person for it. There are many different ways that you can show you're the one. So, what qualifications and previous experience do you have? Don't just list your grades here. Take the part of your degree that's relevant and show how it's relevant experience for the PhD project. And try not to force a tenuous link. It's better that it's relevant. Dedication. This is something you can show through your understanding of the project, as well as the value and the outcome section we talked about earlier. This can also come from the tone of your proposal. Are you showing your enthusiasm and skills in how you write? Do you have any training needs? This really isn't a negative. It's actually a really good thing to show that you understand your field and where your weaknesses might be. No one starts a PhD knowing everything, so it just shows that you have good expectations. So an example could be, don't just say I need Python training, I don't know how to code. A PhD, you need to show that you've put the effort in to find a solution. So you could say, Python's a gap in my knowledge, and I would like to join the undergrad lectures in my first year to learn. This also shows your dedication. And like with dedication, you want to show that you have the ambition to see this project through and that it'll help you in the future. Don't just say you want to go into academia. Think about why you want to do it and why it's important to you. Even if you're not sure what the future looks like, consider the impact of your project on the field and your future goals. Could you learn transferable skills through this project? And now we're in the last third of our talk, which is how to write a research proposal. And at the very end, we're going to include a worked example. So don't let the research proposal intimidate you. It's a document about a subject you like, and it's an essay you've written before, like any essay you've written before. You want to take your reader through the story of your project. So here's a basic structure. You've got a title, an overview, which is kind of like your introduction, go through the existing literature, consider your methodology and the time, outcomes, and then conclude. My top tips. Keep that title really simple. It should be basic and explanatory. You might have a specific technical word, like the name of the species you're working on, but you want to make sure that any reader can generally grasp the topic. Remember, the research proposal isn't just for those in your field. Admission staff and funding bodies might want to read it too. And this title is going to change throughout your project, so don't spend too much time thinking on it. When you cover the existing literature, be focused and concise. Remember, it's not a literature review. And make sure to include your methods to show that the project's viable in that 3 to 4 year timescale, and you show your specific understanding of the subject. And the outcomes, that's a really good place to show your passion that the project is worthwhile. But the most important thing is to check with the university you're applying to, check their requirements and follow them. Typically the word count is about 1,000 to 2,000 words, but don't keep writing just to add waffle to hit a word count. A clear and concise research proposal actually shows a lot of skills in your understanding of the field and your ability to communicate them, and that's much more important than hitting a word count. So how do you actually start writing? Well, I'll say it again, check the exact requirements with your university. But you might remember I said at the start, if you close your eyes and you picture your project, you've probably got all these ideas swirling around in your mind. Well, now's the time to write those down. Write down everything and don't worry about making it sound good. Just get them on paper. Once your ideas are tangible, you can then begin the process of writing. When you've got something of a first draft, take a break and look at your work with fresh eyes. This is really important. Try to read it as though you don't know your idea or the subject area, and then you might be able to see the places where it's not clear or where there are gaps. You'll then have to review and redraft, and you might have to do that again. Take that time, go through multiple drafts, and know that you can actually share it with someone, maybe an academic, a personal tutor, or even a friend. They can help check it for mistakes and make sure that it's really clear. And know when you're ready and you submit it, your supervisor might actually rip it apart. But if they do this, it means there was something there. So try not to take it to heart. It's one of the first steps towards turning your idea into a PhD project. The best way to see if your proposal is good is whether or not it covers the 3 C's. Is it clear? Do you know what you're doing? And is that clear to the reader? Is it concise? Do you understand what's required? Or are you waffling in the hope that you might be able to guess what's required of you? And is it coherent? This is a chance to show your writing skills. Even practical PhDs involve writing up your work throughout and at the end, so show that you can communicate your ideas well. Practical tips for this include using new sentences, for new ideas, short sentences, paragraph correctly, and have a narrative that takes your reader through the story of your project. We finally made it. It's worked example time. So these research proposals have been written and reviewed by 2 people who successfully completed humanities PhDs, but they have been written to fit on the slide. So take it with a little bit of a pinch of salt. They're definitely not a full research proposal, but I hope it'll give you an idea of how to apply what we've spoken about today. Okay, so I'm going to try and read the title out. Spaces of Spectrality, Connecting Gothic Novels and Travelogues. Does anybody actually know what this means? I'm sure some of you do, but it sounds very impressive. It's just very ambiguous. The title isn't really specific and it doesn't connect the what with the why. I'm not really sure what this person wants to study, so keep your title clear and concise, and remember, it will evolve. Okay, so you might want to pause it if you want to read each little sentence, but I'm just going to talk through what this is about. So this paragraph is like that opening context setting paragraph, but there are 2 key things that are missing. What is the question, and why are we wanting to look at this? Why is it important? That's the second thing that's missing. This person's pretty much saying, my PhD is important because it covers something important, therefore it is important. And the thing is, that really doesn't convince me that it's worth studying. So these next 2 sections, they look at the methodology. So looking at this first paragraph, it's very late in the proposal to get a better idea of what the person actually wants to study. But the thing is, I still can't work out what angle they're taking or what theories they're working with. If we then look at the second paragraph, they've listed 11 authors, but not given me any time frame, location, why specifically all of these authors, and what angle do they want to take. Unfortunately, this tells me they don't know their field because they can't be specific with the methods, the terminology, or the sources they're picking. And the other really big concern here is the feasibility. Can you actually look at the work of all 11 authors in 3 to 4 years? Can this project be achieved? And I'm just not sure. So then our last 2 paragraphs. It's really good to mention your previous experience here. So we're looking at the paragraph that's I have an MA and a BA, but they haven't told me any specific details about what they previously studied. Is it even relevant to this PhD? And top tip, don't say that you're dedicated, show it. Be specific about your previous experiences and how they have prepared you for this PhD. And then with the last paragraph, this really shows that the person hasn't done research into their field, their sources, or the university itself. I'm not clear whether or not this specific PhD could be completed at this university or why they even want to come here. So I've been really negative so far. But the thing is, this student could be amazing. They could be really knowledgeable and have done all the right research. It's just not coming across. So we're going to take that worked example and show you how it can be improved. This title's much better. It's self-explanatory. I can immediately see it's a comparative study, the angle being taken, and the specific time period. As an outsider, it tells me what I need to know. When you're writing yours, think about the fact the title needs to be easily communicated so pretty much anyone could get it at this point. So first paragraph. This is that context paragraph again, and I can see what comparison is being made and how they're going to use travel writing. I can also see what the relationship between the 2 topics in the title is. The second paragraph then provides context from the current understanding in the field. It goes on to explain what the purpose of the project is and what gap in the literature it's filling. This is really good. They've clearly described their angle and what they expect to achieve. So looking at the paragraph, I feel this project onwards, make sure you pause it if you want to read. So this shows that the student is drawing on the work of that university department. I know what supervisor expertise they're interested in and where they sit within the research themes. I also know what they're going to use in terms of facilities. They're really specific in mentioning the academics and the archives that they want to use. And this fulfills the feasibility and the suitability parts I mentioned earlier. I know that the project can be achieved using the resources available and that the university they're applying to is suitable. They want to come here. This is a really good example as well of how a sentence or even a small paragraph can hit a number of those requirements that I mentioned earlier. Okay, next paragraph. So this is talking about the fact that their project has opportunities for public engagement. Now that's another big buzzword in the sector at the moment, but only highlight that if it actually fits your project. So going back to how to make your project worthwhile, this is also a great way of showing that your work has value, especially because there are potential outcomes outside of academia. It also shows me that you might be the right person for this. You're showing me that you're interested in doing all of this and that these skills could be useful for a career in or out of academia. You're showing me the transferable skills you want to learn from this PhD project. So we're on to our last little paragraph here. This is talking about their past experiences. They're showing that they're specific and relevant for the PhD they want to study. You can see how their previous experience fits with the topic and the theory. And this is really useful in showing that you're capable of doing this PhD, that you're dedicated and enthusiastic. The person could even add any training needs they might have or things that they want to learn. And just remember with all of this, it had to fit on a slide, so you would need to say all of these things in a lot more detail. And we're at the very end. Thanks for staying with me on this journey. This summary slide includes text I've already shown you, but just so we quickly got a summary here, it's what actually is a research proposal. We talked about defining your research question, your methods, and showing that you're suitable for the project. We said why write a research proposal? What's the purpose? Well, it demonstrates that your project will become a PhD. You need to show it's worthwhile, viable, and that again, you're the one to do it. We then talked about how to write a research proposal. Again, check those university guidelines, write something and then edit it, write anything, and follow that basic essay structure we talked about. And to check that your writing's good, make sure it's clear, concise, and coherent. It can be really lonely trying to work out your next steps, especially if you're juggling uni or work, but try to think about what help is actually out there. You could always ask a trusted academic or your personal tutor for advice on how to approach supervisors and to check your research proposal. The worst is they'll say no, and then you can ask someone else. If you're still at university, there may be resources available at the library, and if not, check to see whether or not some of these resources are publicly available. But whatever happens, no, we're here to help. We have a detailed guide on our website, which is everything that I've said in a lot more detail. So you can read that at your own pace. Or you can check out blogs from our students who've actually done this. They've written research proposals and they're sharing their top tips. Some of our links will be in the description, the video description. So make sure you check that out. And thank you so much for watching.